Namaste. A warm welcome to everyone for today's session for the Vedic Astrology Masterclass. As we proceed with this series honoring the 113th Jayanti of Dr. B.V. Raman, let us briefly recenter our focus. We are inspired by Dr. Raman's lifelong mission to present Jyotishya as a systematic discipline, free from superstition and grounded in intellectual rigor. His work serves as the benchmark for our studies. May that same spirit of sincere inquiry and dedication guide our learning today. Let us now turn our attention to our esteemed master and the subject for this session. I'm Dr. Akhila Murthy, your host and guide for today's session. We are delighted to welcome you from all corners of the globe as we begin an intellectual journey. Whether you're an experienced professional, a devoted student, or simply someone with a keen interest, we believe today's session will offer you valuable insights and perspectives on astrology. Today, we are coming together to explore the topic Devalaya Vastu. We encourage you to approach the session with curiosity and an open mind as we navigate this fascinating subject. It is a great honor for me to introduce the distinguished speaker for today's presentation, Sri Niranjan Babu sir. Sri Niranjan Babuji continues the astrological lineage of his father, the world-renowned Dr. B.V. Raman. With over 40 years of dedicated practice, he is the editor-in-chief of the Astrological eMagazine and a trusted Vastu and astrology consultant to esteemed global institutions including ISKCON and Sivananda Ashram Yoga Farm. His work is defined as a deep practical application of ancient sciences to meet contemporary needs, a skill his father commended as firm grip on the subject. During the Vedic Astrology Masterclass 2025 edition, Sri Niranjan Babuji will deliver a special session on Devalaya Vastu. This class is designed for astrologers and dedicated Vastu students seeking to synthesize their knowledge. The discussion will move beyond theory to explore how a temple's sacred architecture is the physical manifestation of energies. You will gain insights into the application of mandalas in sacred places and understand the integral connection between direction and planetary energies and deity installations. The integrated perspective combining the wisdom of Manasara, Mayamata, and Samarangana Sutradhara offers a richer, more holistic framework for your own Vastu practice. Now, without further delay, let us warmly welcome Sri Niranjan Babuji. We are all eagerly looking forward to your presentation, sir. Over to you, sir.
Namaskara, good evening. Today's topic is Devalaya Vastu or temple architecture. But before I start speaking about this particular subject, I will pay my obeisances to my parents, Dr. B.V. Raman and Srimati Rajeswari Raman. And of course, my tributes to my wife, Srimati Umarani, who passed away last year. My reverential pranams to all the three. So before I actually go into the subject, I would like to give you a small guidelines for your day-to-day activities, which will help you to go, well in not just necessarily the spiritual aspect, but even in the physical aspect of good health, proper thinking, and and right attitude towards the society. This small simple guidelines will definitely help you. So let me begin one by one. I mean, a few slides I will speak about this one. These are requirements that all of you can follow, irrespective of whether you're into temple vastu or the normal human constructions or whatever. For everyone, this will be applicable. The previous night of, that means, suppose no, today, you're speaking of today, the previous night, what you should do is you should sleep with your head to the south or east. So this is very important. Sleeping is very important. So the adults who are responsible, they can put their heads to the south, and these youngsters are still trying to come up in life, whether they're in a school, college, or trying to get good jobs and all that. They can sleep with their head to the east. The second thing that you can do is, uh, before going to bed, have a small half a spoon of turmeric powder on your tongue, and let it mix with the saliva. Don't take water immediately. So this will help you in keeping your lungs clear, and that way, you'll be able to, your health will be good. You'll be able to be free from cough and cold. This is a very simple thing. When turmeric powder, about half a spoon, you put it on your tongue, and then later on, after 5 minutes, if you feel, you can always go in for a little water. Then, as soon as you get up in the morning, turn to your right and recite the Devi Sloka, looking at your palms. I will give this sloka later on. The Devi Sloka, as soon as you get up, you do that, looking at your palms. And, this way, you're activating you're also, making use of your hands. This way, you'll be activating your marma points, which are very essential for your good health. Then the next aspect would be energize the body and Atma. So that is, you go for a walk, morning walk, then do some exercises. And then when you go for a walk, the morning walk is very important. When you go for the morning walk, try to listen to the Aditya Hridayam. If you're able to recite the Aditya Hridayam, that's also good. The sun's energies in the morning are very necessary for each of you, whether youngsters or elders. Even the elders, I would suggest they go for a morning walk, expose themselves to the sun energies, and then either if they're able to recite the Aditya Hridayam, well and good, Tato Yuddha Parishrantam Samare Chintya Siddham. Or else, if they're not able to, they can at least listen to Aditya Hridayam during their walk. Then the next aspect is keeping yourself clean. After you finish your walk and all that, have a bath. And normally, people tend to do the cooking without their bath and all that. I would always suggest, you have your bath and then do the cooking, and then, always try to go for a plant-based meal. This way, your sattvic energies will manifold. When the sattvic energies will manifold, you'll be able to think better, and you'll be able to do whatever work you need to do properly. Then you should practice pranayama. That is also very important. I mean, there are different pranayamas. I will not go into details of all that, but the basic Sukhapurvak pranayama, you can do every day after you finish your exercises and all that. And then you can also meditate. That's also important. A little meditation for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 4 minutes every day after your pranayama. That will also keep your body and mind clean. Then the spiritual protection is very important. Basically, since we are speaking of we're going to speak about Devalaya Vastu, the temple Vastu. I have brought this aspect also into consideration. Your spiritual protection is very necessary. So every day, you try to, of course, you may have, already been doing some puja, prayers, and all that. But generally, what I would recommend is the Gayatri mantra is very important. If you have been initiated into that by your parent, that is the best, of course. Gayatri mantra is good. Then the Ganesha mantra, Vagisha Sumana Saha, it will come that way. That Ganesha mantra also you can recite. And then after that, the Mrutyunjaya mantra is also very important. Mrutyunjaya mantra is, victory over death. The Mrutyunjaya is the meaning. So, for it to take care of your health and keep your body in good stead, you should recite the Mahamrutyunjaya mantra also. You can space out. I'm not saying do everything one after another. You can space out, morning, afternoon, or evening. You can space. In fact, the classical works say Trikale Japam is very good. Trikale Japam means morning sunrise, then noon, and then sunset, evening sunset. These three times, doing the Japam is very good. So you can plan, accordingly, you can do all that. Then, of course, the Lakshmi Narayana mantra is also very important. Lakshmi is also important, Narayana is also important. They're together, Om Shri Lakshmi, Om Shri Lakshmi Narayanaya Nama. That's all. So that simple mantra also you can recite. And what I would say is, like I said, don't try to concentrate in just one particular space of time. That way, a few days you will do and then you'll stop doing it. Space it out throughout the day. And that way, that spiritual raksha around you will get stronger and stronger. Then we'll come to the next one. The lifestyle and cleanliness aspect is very important. Like I already said, go for plant-based food, and then another important thing is you try to maintain social distance. Today, what's happening is everyone goes on shaking hands with every other person and then hugging them and all that they do. I would not recommend that, because each of us we have an energy around us. That energy could be weak or strong. So whenever you shake hands with somebody else, that energy, which is, suppose you have strong energy, that weakens. And suppose you do not have energy, that whatever minimal energy is there also, that could go, because you do not know the evolution of the other person. So I would recommend not to shake hands and not to hug people. Hugging family members is different, but hugging outsiders and all that, I would not recommend. And then like I said, this greeting with a namaste is always good. Instead of shaking hands, you can greet with a namaste. Namaste is also called an Anjali Mudra, because you're putting all the fingers together. The palm is together. That pressure is there. The marma points get activated, and that way your health also becomes better. That's every time you greet, that Anjali Mudra comes into activity. So that way, greeting with a namaste is always recommended. Then spiritual closure, that is what I've said. What I would suggest is every day when you go to bed, that means after you lie on the bed, try to listen to, I'm not asking to recite, try to listen to Vishnu Sahasranama. A lot of people are there, including MS Subbulakshmi, they have sung the Vishnu Sahasranama very well. You just play it at minimal volume. Don't blare the volume too much so that it disturbs other people. You lie on the bed and then listen. Basically, Vishnu is also the deity for Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of intellect. Particularly for youngsters and all that, this is important. Their morning will begin, with proper thinking and all that. They would be able to do well in their exams. They will be able to do well in their day-to-day life, in their school, college, and all that. So even for elders, who do not get sleep and all that, this acts like a sleeping pill. Listening to Vishnu Sahasranama is more like, listening, more like, taking the sleeping pill. That way, the elders also, they get very good sleep. So these are certain things that you should follow. And once you do all this one, the inner radiance automatically builds up, and people will start respecting and liking you. And that interaction with other people also will definitely get better. And suppose you're working for a company and all that, your recognition in terms of your work and all that also will be seen. So listening to the Vishnu Sahasranam at bedtime is definitely good. So when you do all that, automatically you will keep smiling. Now I'll go into the first one. I said, the as soon as you get up, do the Devi prayer. This is the one. Here, what you do is, both as soon as you get up, you rub both the palms together, and when you rub both the palms together, you look at them, and then you recite this small prayer. Karagre Vasate Lakshmi. See, the ancients identified the entire palm to be the Trishaktis. Trishaktis are Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Parvati. Parvati or Gauri. So that way, all the strength of the three Shaktis are there in the palm. So you look at the top and then say Karagre Vasate Lakshmi. Then you go look into this middle portion of the palm. Kara Madhya Saraswati. Saraswati, is most important for students, who are going to schools, colleges, and trying to achieve something, doing PhDs and all that. Saraswati is very important. So you say Karagre, Karamadhya Saraswati. Then you say Karamule Sthite Gauri. That means Karamule means the bottom portion. You look at the bottom portion and then you say that prayer. And after all these three prayers you do, you say Prabhate Kara Darshanam. That means in the morning I am looking at my palms, the hands. That is what they say. When they say Kara, that's the hands that they are looking at. So this is one prayer. When you do that, that means you are showing obeisance to all the three Shaktis, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Parvati. So this is one thing that you can do. Then since I'm speaking of, since basically I'm also into Jyotisha for many generations, I want to say, that both Jyotisha and Vastu, you can't isolate Jyotisha, you can't isolate Vastu Shastra. Both of them are related. And Jyotisha is said to be a Vedanga. So the Vedas are the knowledge books of India. So Jyotisha is a Vedanga, means it is a limb of the Vedas. Jyotisha is a limb of the Vedas. So what is Vastu Shastra? Vastu Shastra is a Upaveda. So it's called minor Veda. In fact, Vastu Shastra is also known as Stapatya Veda. Jyotish Shastra is time personified as Kala Purusha, and Vastu Shastra is space personified because primarily it considers the space, whereas Jyotish Shastra considers the time at which one is born, or when muhurta has to be worked out. Time is important. So Jyotish Shastra personifies time as Kala Purusha. Vastu Shastra personifies space as Vastu Purusha. Then our Jyotisha, and because these are the questions that go on coming to me, that's why I'm before actually going to the Vastu Devalaya Vastu, I'm talking to you about all this. Our Jyotisha and Vastu sciences. So basically, science means you have different definitions for science. So science basically systematized knowledge. So whether you take Jyotisha or whether Vastu, it is systematized knowledge. Having been there for so long, and going through the onslaughts of time, also it is still surviving means there have to be sciences. And then we come to modern architecture and Vastu Shastra again. When you speak of that, whether Vastu Shastra is to do only with nothing to do with engineering or only to do with the metaphysical aspects of life. People go on asking me all these questions. So basically, as far as modern architecture is concerned, you call it a science. So when you speak of Vastu Shastra, we look into the building materials. For instance, when we construct a temple, we look into the specific building materials that are compatible for constructing the temple. So then we also look into the structural integrity. We put the columns, pillars, and all that. The structural integrity is also considered. And then the engineering principles of safe designing and functional spaces, based on certain mandalas and all, we decide. So that way, Vastu Shastra, I would call, it's also as good as your modern architecture. Vastu Shastra, it is, we can say, the ancient science of Indian architecture. How old is Vastu Shastra? 50 years, 500 years, 5,000 years, or more? One of my talks, when I asked, they said it's about 150 years old, 100 years old, and all that. If you carefully observe, we have spoken of Vastu Shastra in the Ramayana and Mahabharata times. That is the Treta Yuga and the Dwapar Yuga. We have spoken about Vastu Shastra. So, broadly speaking, a yuga covers a period of 4,32,000 years. So, going back, you can imagine the number of years. For the number of years, these sciences, whether it's Jyotisha or Vastu Shastra, have survived the onslaught of time, means it has to be very good. Both of them have to be a very good sciences. So the age, it's not 50 years, 100 years, or 150 years. But any number of years, you can't, you go on checking on the Dwapar Yuga, the Treta Yuga, so even go back to Satya Yuga also, how many, based on the age of based on the period of one Yuga, 4,32,000 years, you can imagine how old Vastu Shastra is. So, many have asked me, we want proper information about Vastu. I'm not speaking of any human habitation or divine habitation. Vastu Shastra applies for both. So many people have asked me, what are the books that, can give good information on Vastu Shastra and Jyotish Shastra. Now, specifically, I'm speaking of temples, so I'm going to speak about books on Vastu Shastra. The Amarkosha has enough material on Vastu Shastra. The Ramayana, definitely, I've already said, Ramayana has great information on Vastu Shastra. Mahabharata, Jatakas and, Chulluvaga, they relate to the Buddhist literature. So they also have a lot of information on Vastu Shastra. Then the Puranas, a lot of Puranas different Puranas are there. So, in fact, one of the Purana, Matsya Purana, has a lot of information on Vastu Shastra. Then you have the Brihat Samhita of Varamihira. Brihat Samhita of Varamihira is an encyclopedia of Hindu culture that covers Jyotisha, not necessarily Jyotisha only. It also includes, planetary transits, rulerships, and then meteorology, earthquakes, space, hurricanes, then plant treatment also. It speaks about, landscaping and all that. Plant treatment is also spoken about. It speaks of architecture, and when it speaks of architecture, it also speaks of Devalaya and Manushalaya and much more, of course. So Brihat Samhita, I think it's available. The English translations are available. Here, probably Motilal Banarsidas, if you visit in Bangalore, I think they're based, they have a shop in Bangalore somewhere in Jayanagar, I'm not sure. I'm not, so of course, so you can, those of you living in Bangalore, in India also, you just Google, you'll be able to get that. Brihat Samhita is, encyclopedic information about Hindu culture. Then we have the agamas. Different agamas are there. So many agamas, they give different, enough information about Vastu Shastra. Then you have the tantras, Kirana Tantra and such other tantras. They give a lot of information. Then we have the Kautilya's Artha Shastra. See, if people are ignorant, they say Kautilya's Artha Shastra is to do only with the economy aspects and all that. Kautilya's Artha Shastra has a lot of information on Vastu Shastra also. You have to refer. In fact, there's one book, one translation by, if I remember the name properly, Shama Shastri, I think is Shama Shastri. His book may be available. The English translation may be available. If you go through that one, you'll get a lot of information about Vastu Shastra. Then we have, of course, these books which already uh, we've spoken about. Maya Mata is there. Maya, they're all totally dedicated to Vastu Shastra. Then you have Manasara. Then you have Samarangana Sutradhara, and then Manushyalaya Chandrika. Manushyalaya Chandrika, of course, basically deals with human habitations. That is a lot of information. Manushyalaya Chandrika, I think it may also have, the English translation available. You just need to Google and find out. And then my books contain a lot of information about Vastu Shastra. My books have been published by the Lotus Press people in USA. You can just Google there and then you'll be able to get my books also. You get a lot of information on Vastu Shastra. So now we come to the subject, Devalaya Vastu. What is Devalaya Vastu? Devalaya Vastu basically means divine habitation. Just like, Manushyalaya Vastu means human habitation. The general Vastu that we speak of is normally to do with human habitation. Whereas, the Vastu that we speak with temples and, the divinity, it is called Devalaya Vastu. India is a land of exquisite temples. Of course, so many hundreds and hundreds of temples across the country there are, and many have been built several centuries or many thousands of years back. They've been built, and even today, they are standing strong and sturdy. Means you can imagine that they were very much aware of the modern engineering principles of construction and such things. So we have that very strong basic culture of building properly. And if you also carefully observe, the temples invariably uh, have pushkarinis or water areas. See, this particular slide will indicate, that a lot of water is there. So the temple was primarily a place. You should also understand the temple was not just for divinity that they constructed. They also constructed the temple as a place where people could get together, pray, and take the blessings of the deities. They would get together, the consecration. So the temples would also be a meeting point. The temples again based on whatever I'm saying, the temples were a place where diverse community celebrations and exhibitions of music, dance, drama, paintings, sculpture, pottery, textiles, and other arts were held periodically. So basically, and all the business activity also was being conducted in temple areas, and constantly the interaction of relatives, friends, and different groups of people was always possible in these temple areas. Another thing that you also have to carefully note, I mean, if you observe, I mean, now the cities have grown randomly, they have grown. But earlier times, the temple was invariably in the center of the city. So in the Brahmasthana, that is what is called the Brahmasthana of the city or the village or whatever it was. So that, people from all over, they could consecrate, they can congregate together at that particular place. It would be equidistant for all these people. So when they came and they wanted, to do some functions and all that, or they wanted to have some communication, they would come into this temple area where, they could also have the blessings of the deities, and at the same time, get together, converse, talk, take decisions and all that. The temple also, but one important thing that you also need to know is, those days the temple had royal patronage. That means the kings, in fact, many of the temples, if you carefully observe the history, if you find out, including kings like Bhoja Raja and all that, they have constructed the temples, and many of these royal kings, they have supported temples. That is important. They have supported temples, and that way, that support from the higher authorities was always there for the temple. Temples were also called Tirtha Kshetras, since most of them had, like I earlier said, had rivers in proximity, and many were surrounded by lakes. So this is also so for that reason, temples were called Tirtha Kshetras. See, water is one thing in Vastu Shastra. Suppose you know the basics of Vastu Shastra. When you speak of northeast, you say northeast is good for water, and the northeast, when you say good for water, you identify that particular northeast area with Jupiter, the Guru. So if the guru in the form of the God is, we're speaking of God, guru in the form of God, if you need to reach his blessings, water areas are definitely good. Any temple construction, it should have a water area nearby, or like a water tank or a pushkarani or even a small pond or something. See, today there are people trying to build small temples and all that. They cannot try to go to near the river and build. In small areas they try to build temples and all that. Then you should see that you have enough of water, so that the Jupiterian strength will come there. Well, like I said, the temple was called the Tirtha Kshetra. Then, what is Vastu Shastra? Somebody, in between, I'll also answer these questions. People have been asking all this. It is the science of architecture, like I just now told you. It is called Sthapatya Veda. It is also the science of dwellings. Dwellings means it could be the human habitation or it could be the divine habitation. So, science of dwellings. So, Vasiti Shastra, you can call it the Vasiti Shastra. Then, it is also a way of life. So, people get together, interact, talk, and all that, spend some time, it's a way of life. So, you can also call it as Jivana Marga. The temple can be built on stone, and earlier it was built through mud and all. Initially it was built, the temples were being built by mud and all that, but basically later it graduated into building through stones and baked bricks and all that. Metals and jewels are also added to strengthen the doorways. When the doorway is done, at the base of the door frame, they also added jewels. Then the architectural and engineering skills are reflected in these temples. Mohenjo-daro and Harappan. The temples of Mahabalipuram, so most of you who are based in India, you would have seen many of these temples you would have seen. Temples of Mahabalipuram, Arunachaleshwar, Brihadishwara. Temples of Hampi, Belur and Halebid. Those living in Karnataka are very familiar with these temples, Hampi, Belur and Halebid. Then Elephanta, Ellora, and Ajanta. These are also fairly well-known places where most of you would have visited. Then the temple of Rameshwaram. So there are a lot of, I've just randomly collected a few and put here. Any number of thousands of temples, which were built long back and still, surviving the onslaught of time. It indicates very much that they were very much aware of the engineering principles that today we are talking about. Basically, they made use of brick, which is called the ishtika. Then they made use of stone, shila, and these, they gave importance to supporting pillars. If you carefully observe the temples and all that, invariably they have a lot of pillars of support. That means they were also very much aware of the foundation. The columns or the pillars, they were basically, to go into the earth. So they were very much aware of the importance of foundation. Now, I've given, this is a small how the temples were being constructed those days. Manasara describes the temple structure as having five courts. For the court, they said prakara. I mean, generally it's pancha prakara, but today, it's being built differently. Uh, Manasara describes the temple structure. The first and foremost court was called the Antaramandala. So you can I will put the numbers there 1, 2, 3, 4. So the inner one was called Antaramandala. The second one was called Antaranihara. The third one was called Madhyama Hara. The fourth one was called the Prakara. All these are, of course, Prakaras only, but this is how they were mentioned, in the Vastu textbooks. And the final one, the fifth one was called the Mahamaryada. And each of them here, I'll give you some more information. Each of them had a court. So when you speak of that, the first court was called Dwara Sabha. The second one was Dwara Shala. Dwara Shala. The third one was Dwara Prasada. The fourth one was the Dwara Harmya. And the fifth one was Mahagopuram. That is the final Gopuram, the biggest Gopuram, which was for the final Prakara called the Mahamaryada. That was called Mahagopuram. So, we now come into another important aspect, Muhurta. In Devalaya Vastu, Muhurta, in Vastu, whether it's Manushyalaya or Devalaya, Muhurta is extremely important. So, the buying land or temples. See, today I'm speaking of, I'm trying to apply it to the modern constructions. Today, what I find is when I travel around the globe, I find that many people they buy the churches or they buy the masjids and then convert them into temples. So buying land or temples, that is what I say. So whatever, or they just buy some building and then try to convert that into a temple. So for this also you need a proper muhurta. Then many a time, what happens is, for instance, recently I've been giving guidance to a temple in near in India, near Kolar. There, the temple was running. It was a Venugopal Swami temple. The temple, over a period of time, it had dilapidated. So these people, without knowing anything, they just demolished all that. So there, I have been giving them the guidance. So for there, at various times, whether it's dismantling something or whether it's constructing something, you need to make use of proper muhurta. Then activating water. For a temple, I told you water is very important. So whether you're trying to go in for a well, or whether you're trying to go in for a bore, or whether you're going in for a pond, or whatever you do for the temple at the temple premises, that is called activating water. For that, the muhurta is very important. Then fixing the Mahadwara frame. See, the main door of the temple, we have the main door of the temple. For that, the framework is first put and then only the doors are fixed. For that, the fixing the Mahadwara frame, the Muhurta is extremely important. You have to take care of that. Then this is a very important thing, it's not to do with Muhurta, but Bhugarbha Vinyasa is trying to induce fertility into the soil on which the temple is coming. So whether it's temple architecture or whether it's human residential architecture or commercial architecture, whatever, this Bhugarbha Vinyasa before construction has to be done. People are ignorant. They mechanically go to the northeast and say, Bhumi Puja and do the Bhumi Puja. The classical works have not spoken of Bhumi Puja in the northeast, but they have spoken about Bhugarbha Vinyasa. You have to look into the classical works. I gave the some of the titles, Mayamata, Manasara, Samarangana Sutradhara, Manushalaya Chandrika. If you go through them, you will find, there is a reference to Bhugarbha Vinyasa. The Bhugarbha Vinyasa, when you do that, you try to induce fertility into the soil on which the temple is going to come. The evil energies are minimized and healthy energies are optimized. I'm not going to the details of how we are doing and all that, but basically this is what we need to do, the Bhugarbha Vinyasa. That is showing respect to the mother soil before the actual construction is done. Then for the Kumbhabhishekam of the temple, that is after the construction is over and it has to be opened, the Kumbhabhishekam is done. The Kumbhabhishekam of the temple is also very important. For that, a proper muhurta has to be fixed. Then, speaking of the muhurta again, this is a general thing that I've given, and you can also make a note of this. I mean, those people of you who are looking at it, of course, it will be there in YouTube permanently. But those who want to make notes immediately, you can always, click your mobile camera and take a photograph of this. The lunar days, Shashti, Ashtami, and Chaturdashi are to be avoided. These are the normal guidelines for temple construction. Shashti, Ashtami, and Chaturdashi are to be avoided. Then the lunar months Ashada, Bhadrapada, Maga, and I've given the tentative time frames. June, July, August, September, and January, February. These are also to be avoided. Then the nakshatras the ruling nakshatras on those particular day, these are also, there's some recommendation on that also. When you decide on building the temple, the following nakshatras are said to be good: Ashwini, Rohini, Mrugashira, Punarvasu, Pushyami, Chitta, Swati, Shravana, Dhanishta, and Satabisha. And of course, the last nakshatra, which is Revati. So these are the nakshatras that are recommended. I'm not saying that has to be done only on these nakshatras, but however, wherever possible, try to see that, you try to, when the temple construction, it's not necessary for the temple construction. Even when you do your home construction also, try to see that, you have these nakshatras ruling, and try to avoid the 3 lunar days that I've given here. And also, try, if it's possible, try to avoid the lunar months also, Bhadrapada, Ashada, and Maga. So now, when for the construction of the lamp, when you select the, suppose we now are trying to select the land that has much groundwater with lush plants and trees are best suited for the construction of temples. This is very important, particularly temples. Like I said, the importance of natural greenery, landscaping, and water flowing and all that is important. And basically, one simple Vastu guideline that I would give is, suppose, and it can also apply to your Manushalaya Vastu also. So what I would suggest is, if suppose there are lakes and all that, near your site, if they are to the north or east, that is very good. As much as possible, avoid having the lakes and ponds and such other things, to the south and west. Even when they suppose, you select a land and you try to construct a small temple, there also, you try to create some water, try to create the water in the north, or try to create the water in the east. In fact, one of the classical works, I don't remember the title, it very clearly say, Uttara Ishanya is very good for activating water. You can make a note of that. If we observe ancient temples, we invariably notice that they were built in proximity to ponds, lakes, or rivers. Most of the ancient temples that have withstood, the onslaughts of time for ages, for many generations, or many decades, or for many thousands of years, you will invariably find that they have these pushkarinis, are the lakes that are also called the pushkarini. The lakes are there, the rivers are there, and ponds are there. Invariably, for instance, I'll give you a simple 4 or 5 temples. I'll give you the Kashi Vishwanatha Temple, Varanasi, then Sringeri Sharadamba Temple, then Srirangam, which is the 7 prakaras. Srirangam has 7 prakaras. The Ranganatha Swami Temple. Then Amritsar, you have the Golden Temple. Then the Dashavatara Temple at a place called Deogar, and the Nimshamba Temple in Srirangapatna. Nimshamba Temple is there in Srirangapatna. That also has a beautiful lake and pond and all that. Then in Badrinath, you have Vishnu Temple, and many more are there. Many more temples. If you carefully observe all the traditional temples, invariably they are the Pushkarinis, the water areas, the water lakes where the rivers where they're running, the Kaveri. In fact, many of those had the Kaveri river running around them or against them. So the placement of water in a temple is very important. Then as far as the plants are concerned, 32 in Vastu Shastra, you have 32 plants, beginning from Sakala Mandala to the Indrakanta Mandala. I will not go into the details of the different mandalas. I'm only highlighting the 2 important mandalas which are used for temple, the Manduka Mandala and the Asana Mandala. So the first one that I've said, Sakala Mandala, is a 1 module plan. Sakala Mandala is basically your sitting mandala. So when you sit on the ground, don't sit directly on the earth. Have a small mat or small, wooden peetham. We call it the Kannadadalli peeta ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ. So wooden peetham you have and sit on that. That becomes the Sakala Mandala where your energy is taken care of. So when you build a temple, you build, you either consider the Manduka Mandala where 8 by 8 modules, that is 64 modules are there, or you consider the Asana Mandala, which is 10 by 10. So based on these two, depending on the size of the temple that you are planning, you can use these mandalas. And when you're speaking of a series of temples and all that, you can always use the bigger one, Indrakanta Mandala. Here, if you carefully observe, I think I've presented you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've presented you the Manduka Mandala. So when you speak of the Manduka Mandala, the central portion, the central 4 modules, that is called the Brahmasthana, where you normally have the basic the primary god here, that is the Brahmasthana. And then also, of course, it will grow bigger and bigger. But at the end of when you look at the end of that, the corners, invariably, they relate to certain idols. For instance, suppose, the top is north and then this is east. This portion will relate to northeast. The northeast, the deity is Jupiter. So Jupiter, the planet is Jupiter. So the deity for Jupiter is Lord Shiva. So this is the place of Lord Shiva. Then you come down into this corner. This will be northeast. This will be southeast. Southeast is to do with Venus. When you speak of Venus, you speak of Devi. Any Devi it could be. It could be Lakshmi, it could be Durga, it could be Parvati, it could be Saraswati, it could be whatever. This is the Devi's strength. Then as you go into this corner, you will find this will be the southwest. Southwest is always the place for Ganesha. So whenever you have problems, when you're trying to construct a temple and you want to have certain other things, outside I'm not speaking within the temple. Suppose you want to have outside the temple also, you can, based on this mandala, you can think of having Ganesha here in the southwest. Then we come into the northwest. Northwest, when you speak of northwest, the Panchabhuta, the primary element that you speak is Vayu. So Vayu Putra's placement there is definitely good. This is the placement of Anjaneya, Hanuman. So this is how you would go. So the primary rule is that the selected uh, temple structure should orient to the cardinal directions: north, east, south, or west. So there's nothing like you shouldn't face south and all that. For instance, Dakshinamurti faces south only. So the important thing is they should vote the face to the cardinal directions, not to the angular directions. Today, when you look into all these different buildings coming up, all the modern architectural design buildings, they're not looking into the cardinal directions. They're built at various angles and all that. And naturally, even though they would be built so well and they're well designed and all that, people living there, they're normally not happy. At least in a 1 to 10 scale, at least 3 4 people are always finding difficulties in that. So based on this, particularly temple, and if you're able to construct your home, you're thinking of constructing your home also, try to orient your structure, orient the temple to the cardinal directions. And like I said, for the temple, you normally make use of the manduka, the asana mandala. The manduka is the 64 module plan, and the asana mandala is the 100 module plan. See, this is one general way of construction I've done. Uh, in fact, uh, if you carefully observe, I've given one important thing is you should see that for a temple, the doors are always in the center. So that's important. You have to look into that. The doors have always to be into the center. And this is a temple that based on certain guidelines, one of these maps that I've provided, the width of the temple is measured externally. See, when you work out, there's what is called the Ayadi Shedvarga. I'll show you, I'll tell a little about. I'm not going to the details of Ayadi Shedvarga, I'll just mention a little. So for the dimensions of the temple, it is necessary that you work on the Ayadi. So based on that Ayadi, you try to identify certain dimensions which are compatible to certain guidelines of the Shedvargas. There, the most important is when you do check on that. Normally, the Ayadi is worked on the outside. So the width of the temple is measured externally. That's what I am telling you. Bahya. It's called Bahya. The height of temple should be twice its width. So whatever width of the temple is there, the height should be at least twice. So that is one aspect that you need to consider. Then the base of the temple is said to be one third the height of the temple. So whatever temple, suppose the temple is say 100, say 90 feet, the base should be 30 feet. That is what, I'm giving you certain standard temple guidelines of construction. So the base should be one third. Base means you can say that Adhisthana, that is what they say, no? The Adhisthana, they call it the Adhisthana. So that should be one third of the height of the temple. And all this is also, I think, mentioned in Bruhat Samhita. It is mentioned. Then there's one another text, Vishnu Dharmottanna. So in that text also this is mentioned. Now let me see. I'll give you. I think I may be able to. This is see one thing you should always keep in mind. We have to adapt to the modern changed conditions of. You cannot. Sometimes you may not be able to adopt ADOPT, but you should be able to adapt ADAPT. I'll tell you one simple guideline for forgetting of this temple. Earlier times the restrooms were outside the building. They were never within the building. It was only the bath that was within the building, but the toilets and such other things, they're always outside the building. But today, when you go to a place, the first thing that you ask the person is, does it have an attached toilet? So this is, you cannot say, Vastu does not allow it, I'm putting it outside, So you have to, they adapt ADAPT, that has to be done. So even here, in terms of the space that is available, certain small modifications can be done. For instance, let me show one more thing. Generally, the internal width, see, this is the Garbhagudi. The lighter area is called is the Garbhagudi. The internal width of the Garbhagudi is said to be half of the external width. So that means this is the external width. So the internal width should be so much. That is what says. So that means all this is the structure, the wall, so thick. But today, you're not able to have such thick walls and all that. No? So some compromises have to be done. But earlier time, what they did was this particular width of the Garbhagudi was exactly half the width of the temple. And then again, the door width. So for the door, it had a width. That door width was said to be one fourth the width of the sanctum sanctorum. So suppose this is the sanctum sanctorum, one fourth the width is the door. So that was it. That is how they identified the door. Then again, the door height also was important. The height of the door, they said it should be double. Suppose the door width was about 4 feet. The height should be 8 feet. So certain balances they created for getting the optimum energy into the Garbhagudi is a very sacred place where daily consecration is taking place and all that. So to get the optimum energy into that, they had certain guidelines in terms of having the different measurements. And one more important thing is, if you can just look at this one, for temples, they should always have middle doors, Madhya Dwara. But for human habitations, one of the classical works very clearly says the Madhya Dwara is banned. They were Bahishkara, they say, that central, you should never have the central doors. In fact, one of the classical works, it says, this is good for a temple, but for the middle door for a human habitation is bad. It says, Kulanashaha. So Kulanashaha means extinction of the family. So not necessarily physical extinction, they may not be able to live together. Each is separate. The husband is separate, the wife is separate, they're in some other part, they're working somewhere else, the children are somewhere else, all this, that is basically when you have that middle door, the problem for human habitations comes. But for temples, devalayas, the middle door is compulsory, it should be there. Then we also have another thing, the height of the idol, including the pedestal. The idol should be on a pedestal that should be 1/8 less than the doorway. So whatever the doorway is there, so the doorway, suppose it's going to be 8 feet, 1/8 less than that. So 1 foot less than that, it should not cross above the door. That is what they said. That's including the pedestal. The idol, including the pedestal, should not cross the door height. Then we have this mention, Varahamira mentions a lot of temples where I'm not, in this small 1 hour class, I won't be able to go into all the details of this temple, different temples and all that. I'll just give you the names that, that Varahamira has identified. The Meru temple, the Mandara temple, the Kailasa temple, the Vimana temple, the Sarvatobhadra temple, different temples he has mentioned, and with varied dimensions and many stories also. That means, as you go up, it goes on decreasing. Each story we can see here. This is what I mentioned here. You can see the cursor, these things. As they go up, they go on reducing. All that, Varamira has spoken about in his Brihad Samhita. And then most important is they've always given for the temples, they should have very good ventilation and sunlight. So that's why, they said the big, huge doors and then lot of ventilation, openings were there. Good ventilation and natural light. That is what they also wanted. Natural light into the temples was very necessary. Basically, say, Jyotishis will know that sun is the planetary king. Sun is the planetary king. Sun is, and even otherwise, like the earlier speaker said, as far as the sun is concerned, it is to do with good health and all that. So basically, they wanted, when people were, so many people were congregating into the temples and all that, they wanted, them to be healthy. So they allowed in a lot of ventilation and good doors, big doors. Then we come into this Ayadisha, because the buildings, when you do the temples, naturally, you don't randomly, fix some size and then do it. You have to base it on the six formula, the six building formula. So what are these? I'll not going to. I'll give you the formula. I'll give you, but I'll not go into the details of that, because for that itself, if you go to my YouTube, you carefully Google and YouTube, I've specifically spoken in detail about Ayadisha Dvarga. That will be applicable even to your homes also. Your both residential and Devalaya, Manushalaya and Devalaya, it will be applicable. As far as the Ayadisha Dvarga here is concerned, I'll give the what are the ones that you have to look into. The first is Aya and the Vyaya, gain and the loss. So the Aya should always be more than Vyaya. And then we have the Yoni or Yoni is orientation. So which whether it's going to be north, east, south, west, and all that. For instance, I said no. Dakshinamurti temples are always oriented to the south. So different orientation. So based on that, also there are certain formulas, which you work out the orientation that the particular temple has to have. Then Ruksha is a nakshatra. So the nakshatra, the right nakshatras should be there. Earlier itself, I have given you certain nakshatras and all that. So based on that, the nakshatra was there. And suppose the king was building the temple, then the nakshatra compatibility with the king's nakshatra also was looked into. So when you work out that Ruksha formula, you should also see whether that nakshatra is compatible to the person who's building the temple. Suppose there's a group of people who are doing that temple, and there's a chairman there. You take the nakshatra of the chairman, check on that, and when you work out this formula for the different dimensions and use the Riksha formula, then you see that whatever nakshatra comes is compatible to the chairman's nakshatra. Then you work out the Vara, which is the solar day, and Tithi, which is the lunar day. So Vara is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all that. That is Vara. And then for that also, there's a particular formula. You should work out that formula. And then the Tithi, that is also important. Lunar days, earlier itself also, I gave you certain lunar days that are good and all that. So based on that, you try to work out a proper lunar day also. So which dimension does each formula consider? This is also important. We should know which are the which are the dimensions that have to be used for each formula. For Aya, the length dimension is taken. I'll give you the formula a little later. For Aya, the length dimension is considered. For Vyaya, the width dimension is considered. So like I earlier said, the Aya should always be more than Vyaya. So then when the Aya is more than Vyaya, that is good. Then we have Ruksha and Yoni. Ruksha considers the length again. That is the nakshatra aspect, that we get, considers the length again. And then we have Yoni. Yoni is the direction. So the direction, the width aspect of the construction is taken into consideration. Then the height, total height. After the shikara is put and all that, you look into that height. That for that, that height, the Vara formula is worked out. And then the Tithi formula also, will make use of that height and find out whether the Tithi obtained is a compatible Tithi. Like I told you, certain good Tithis are there. So whether that compatible Tithi is there. Now, as far as this is concerned, the first one is Aya. Again, the formula will be the remainder obtained from the length into 8 by 12. So whatever dimensions are obtained, and the dimensions are not feet, meters, and such other things. The dimensions are I think almost covered. It's just another few minutes quickly I'll go. So I have, this is the formula. Then Vyaya, this is the formula. Width, it takes width into consideration, width into 9 by 10. And then you have Ruksha, which is Nakshatra. For that, the formula is the remainder of the length into 8 by 27. And then you have Yoni, orientation, the remainder of width into 3 by 8. And then Vara, solar day, remainder of height into 9 by 7. And then the Tithi, remainder of height into 9 by 30. So Tithi, when you're considering the lunar day, you're taking 30 into consideration. And then the most important here is the Bhugarbha Vinyasa aspect is very important. That is before I told you, before you actually do the construction, the Bhugarbha Vinyasa has to be done. And then minimum three prakaras have to be there. One the central is called the Brahmasthana, that is the Garbhagudi. Then you have the Daiva, Manusha, and Paishacha. So 3 prakaras have to be there. In fact, Sri Rangam, I already said, no, it has 7 prakaras. And then, the important thing is the Dvajastambham. Dvajastambham is the flagstaff. It is a long pillar-like structure, normally seen with 3 horizontal perches arranged on its top. So this is, it should be pointed to the temple, and it should be at a particular, there's also the measurement, also a particular distance from the temple and a particular height of the temple, almost as height as the structure. Now, quickly we'll go into this. 3 schools of architecture are there. The first one is Dravida, the second one is Nagara, the third one is Vesara. And each one, will consider Dravida is towering Vimana and ornate gopurams, primarily seen in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So these are called Dravida school of architecture. Then Nagara. Nagara is curvilinear Shikara, rising like a flame, typical of temples in north and central India. Then Vesara, graceful blend, star-shaped platforms, intricate carvings, and harmonious fusion of the other 2 styles. So Vesara also takes into consideration the Dravida, Nagara, and uses that. And then we have certain temples: Dravida, Brihadeshwara Temple, Tanjavur, Meenakshi Temple, Madurai, Shore Temple, Mahabalipuram, Nagara, Kandariya, Mahadeva Temple, Kajuraho, Lingaraja Temple, Bhuvaneshwar, Sun Temple, Konar. Then Vesra, Chennakeshwara Temple, Belur, Hosleshwara Temple, Helebedu, Patadkal, all these in Karnataka. Then we have the temples and the different Panchabhutas are there. Nataraja temple is the Akasha, is the Panchabhuta aligned to Nataraja temple is Akasha. Then we have Ekambareshwara temple, Prithvi. And then Jambukeshwara temple, Udaka. Sri Kalahasti temple, that is for Vayu. And then for Agni, you have Arunachaleshwara temple, that is Tiruvannamalai. So one more important thing before I close, I want you to take a note of this one. All these are aligned in the same longitude. All these Panchabhuta temples. So you can imagine the amount of knowledge that the ancients had built thousands of years back. The Nataraja temple, 79 degrees 69 minutes. Ekambareshwar temple, Kanchipuram, longitude 79.69. Jambukeshwara temple, Tirunayaka, longitude 78.7, more or less 79, 78, 79, it's come. Sri Kalahasti temple, 79.69. And then Arunachaleshwara, Tiruvannamalai, 79. All these Panchabhuta temples, they're in one longitude. So this is remarkable, And finally, we come into this one. I'm not saying anything specific about this. The Taj Mahal is also said to be a temple. It is, even though, the international reputed Taj Mahal, they say spread over 17 acres of land, is given credit to Shah Jahan as being built in memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal and all that. But basically, they say it is Tejo Mahalaya Shiva temple. So I think these 2 are not required. So with that, we close the day. And Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. Thank you so much for your patient hearing. I had to rush because I was running against the time. So I finished the. I hope this is giving you some interest in how Vastu for Devalaya is used. Thank you so much. Namaste.
So that was an enlightening presentation on the most complex concept, Devalaya Vastu. Let's now invite our audience to participate in a question and answer session. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box. We will make every effort to address as many questions as time permits. The questions will be displayed on the screen now. So could you kindly read each question aloud before providing your answer?
What are the key architectural and energetic differences between a temple according to Vastu and a home puja room? How do we maintain Vastu principles at home, also especially living outside India? As far as the temples are concerned, I've already given you certain guidelines. The same guidelines, when you come to think of the home temple as the puja room, which you call the puja room, there also, as much as possible, try to have the puja room in the northeast of your structure. And normally, when you do the prayer, see that, you look into the east. East is the direction of sun. So looking into the direction of east is good. And don't worry about, the deities facing west, because the deities, they can face any direction. When it comes, I'm speaking of the puja room at home. I'm not speaking of the temples. So here, the northeast is good, and for whatever reason in the northeast is possible, see that you have the puja room anywhere that does not have the toilets and the restrooms attached to it. So this is what you need to take care of. Next. I think I've already given the same guidelines. I mean, for the previous question, whatever I gave you. How should the design to the temple space within a residence be approached as compared to a full-scale temple in a city? What would be the similarities or differences? So here, actually, I'd given maybe I'll try to later on. I'll give that. Within the temple within the puja room that you build, try to have a platform that has 3 steps. So 3 steps means the platform that has 3 steps, and then on the third, on the topmost step, what you do is you put a yantra, and the yantra consecrated copper yantra. You can always get the copper yantra consecrated in a temple. You put it under that, and based on the top of that, you put your primary deity, whatever primary deity your family has. That photograph has to be put on that. But basically, see that the area is kept clean. There also, when you are doing the construction for the temple, try to work out the Ayadi Shadvarga and have the measurements accordingly. Raman Supraja Rama, that's my son. Looking at all those incredible sights on the screen, Hampi, Ellora, Brihadeshwara, which one inspires you the most? That you should tell. No, it's not me who has to tell that. You, Supraja Rama, you should tell which. All these are built very well. The Hampi, you have to only go there and visit. Each of them, they follow the basic rules of temple architecture that I've just now spoken about, and they're all incredible. Chidambareshwari, she says just in 150 square yard temples constructing, and there will be no proper place for doing pradakshina. Also, temple construction start with one deity and then slowly management start keeping all deities. If you are speaking of, 150 square yard temples, this is the education that you should give. No, now that you have attended my class, you should go and talk to these people. One particular deity, it should be that area should be kept clean, and it should be only for that particular deity. And based on the space available, you can always, have, like I gave you some simple guidelines. On the four corners, you can have, four different deities. Like that, you can plan. But when it comes to a home thing, try to have the photos. That should be good enough. And try to have, the important thing is, that three-level platform, it will work like that itself will work like a yantra, and that will create the metaphysical strength. Your consecration, your prayers regularly, your puja regularly, all that, will definitely help you to see that you're always protected. Anything else? I think we're done.
Those were some very good questions. With that, we wrap up our question answer session. I'd like to offer a heartfelt thanks to each of you for your active participation and insightful questions. Your participation is important and has enhanced our discussion. On behalf of everyone, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to you for imparting your invaluable knowledge and deep expertise, sir. As we conclude today's session, I want to remind you that this is just one of many exciting sessions we have planned in our Vedic Astrology Masterclass series. Our next session will be held on 18th October 2025 by Srimati Komila Saton, and the masterclass topic is Chidra Dasha. We look forward to another enlightening experience and hope you will join us again. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of your knowledge.